Hello and welcome to the Eye on the U podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Hurricanes podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I am joined, as always, on the other line by Susan Miller-Degnan, our Hurricanes beat writer here at the Herald. Susan, what's going on?
Well, I'm back on the East Coast. No more Pacific Northwest for a while.
You got refreshed, recharged during the bye week. Miami obviously hoping they did too, considering the way things went at the end of last month. So let's dive right into it. Obviously, Miami opens ACC play on Saturday at 4 p.m. against North Carolina. Too early in the year to talk must wins, but this one kind of feels a little bit like a must win. We'll get to the larger implications of this game, the ACC race that has yet to begin, but remains the kind of great white hope of this season. So we'll get to all that at the end, but let's start with the big news of the week, which is Miami sticking with Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback. That was even after he got benched in the third quarter of Miami's stunning 45-31 loss to Middle Tennessee. Before the bye week, Jake Garcia came into that game. I would say outplayed Tyler Van Dyke, but it's not like he didn't all of a sudden kind of look like the no doubt answer. Miami used the bye, although it sounds like they kind of knew all along that there was kind of going to be, they were going to stick with Tyler after that game. So let's start with the big question everyone is asking, and that is Miami right to stick with Tyler Van Dyke, even given the way this season has begun?
I think yes. You could have gone with Jake, but I think that I think Mario was right. That would have sent a message that he doesn't have confidence in Tyler, and that's after saying, we might have said this last week, saying all last year that, since December, that he was the best quarterback in the nation. Yes, he has not played right. It hasn't been right. But I think you do need to start him this game, ACC game. He came through in last year, when he'd get mad or whatever, he'd end up coming through. Maybe that can happen this time. I do think you have to give him that benefit of the doubt. And then, if he starts out the way he did last game, Mario, I would think, would keep him on a short leash. Some people think no, that I've talked to, that he'll keep him in there. But I think he can pull him then more readily and see what Jake can do.
Yeah, I mean, he I don't know if we would call what he had in the Middle Tennessee game a short leash. He played into the third quarter of that game.
Right.
But for a guy who came into the year with Heisman hype and reigning ACC Rookie of the Year, I don't know, potential early-ish round of draft pick, all that kind of stuff, that is a pretty short leash. That in game 4 they would try someone else. So I think, I guess a short leash is relative. Are they going to bench him if they go 3 and out on 3 straight series to start the game? Probably not. But
no.
Yeah, I'm with you that if they're down, if they can't do anything in the first half, and not just that they can't do anything, the problem with Tyler has been twofold. One is that, the offense is just kind of a mess all around. Wide receivers aren't getting open. Wide receivers are dropping passes. In the Middle Tennessee game, the run game fell apart. But the other, that is all stuff that is probably beyond the purview of Tyler Van Dyke. One junior sophomore, technically, I guess, quarterback, 21-year-old or however old he is, cannot fix all of that. What he can fix is he's got to make better throws and go back to kind of the gunslinger type kind of attitude we saw him have last year when he was, happily throwing the ball down the field. Obviously probably had better wide receivers last year, but, was making those tight window throws, those tough contested throws. The Texas A&M game, his numbers weren't great, but I think most people came out of that game basically not not necessarily feeling like it was his fault entirely. He could have played better, certainly, but he was, his I think his supporting cast kind of let him down that one. Middle Tennessee game, you did not feel the same way. So he's got to get back to that where, maybe Miami's offense is never going to be as good as it was last year because the scheme and the personnel losses and just the natural, like when you change a system, it takes time to get back into that flow, but we need to see him get back to what we know he can do. And I think if he's not doing that in the first half of this North Carolina game, we'll know it. It's not just going to be based on the yards or the touchdowns or the results.
Yeah.
We'll know it based on seeing the way, where his passes are going, basically.
Oh yeah. I mean, I do not think he was on a short leash, by the way, the other day. I mean, Jake came in the third quarter, sometime in the third quarter, midway through the third quarter. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And you could kind of tell with Tyler.
Yeah.
You could almost tell right away. And even his body language, and I'm not only talking about when he was taken out of the game, just even, watching him play, you felt like he was insecure. I know I said last week, that the amount of the crowd shouldn't affect him at all as far as how many people show up, but it would really be nice to see some Hurricanes fans show up. I do think it helps players. I do, when a lot of people show up, but I mean, I don't even know why I'm saying that, because I don't think it's going to make a difference, because they really never do. Rarely do, unless it's a big game, like an FSU game or.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to get excited after the way the Middle Tennessee game went, obviously, also.
Understand.
But yeah, I think you're right that with Tyler, like that again, you're kind of right that it's not like you've been able to tell this year that he's just been off, right? And if he comes out in the first quarter, first half, and kind of is still playing the same way we saw him play against Middle Tennessee, which was kind of the nadir of this all, but he's been spotty with his accuracy and all that stuff all year. If he plays the first half like he did against Middle Tennessee, I don't know if he makes it to the end of halftime. Right, through 2 interceptions in the first 2 passes of the game. Like, if that happens again, then I think we'll see Jake Garcia. But at the same time, like, I think back to the North Carolina game, which was kind of his first real game last year. He obviously started against Central Connecticut State, but that was like a nothing game against an FCS team. And then it was North Carolina, I think, was the opener, right? And he, or it was one of those first 2 games. I can't remember if North Carolina.
He came back.
Right. And he was not good in the first half of that game. Obviously Jake was hurt, so there was not really a backup behind him. He had an unlimited leash essentially. But he did not start that game well, and he did regroup in that game. He rallied. Miami fell short, but put up big numbers, and it was basically from that moment on he was spectacular. With obviously he wasn't perfect the whole year, but that was when kind of Tyler Van Dyke going toe-to-toe with Sam Howell in a game like that was kind of when he was like, that was kind of the birth of Tyler Van Dyke as we knew him last year. On paper, this North Carolina game could set up similarly. Obviously North Carolina has a very good quarterback in Drake May, who looks right now like the runaway favorite to win that ACC Rookie of the Year that Tyler Van Dyke won last year. Sure. It's high powered as ever. I think they're 6th in the nation in scoring. And at the same time, their defense is awful. One of the worst defenses in the country. So Miami is probably going to have to play a shootout on Saturday. And obviously we saw Tyler Van Dyke thrive in those shootout type games last year. We will see how he responds this year with, Miami, which is not the way that they want to run their offense. When we saw their offense kind of at their peak early in the year, they're not built to play a 90 play shootout, right? Like they were last year. So it's going to be an interesting test, obviously for Tyler Van Dyke, but I think for the entire this entire offense and this just the entire philosophy that Mario Cristobal is bringing. This Miami is really, I think, 0-3 against these Mac Brown North Carolina teams since it came back into the conference. This is a team they've struggled with, but they've tended to score pretty well in these games. So they're going to have to they're going to have to show they can score, because if they fall behind by 14 or 17 points, like it's really tough to keep up with a team like this North Carolina team.
Yeah, I do go back to Tyler again, and we did talk to him and had some interesting conversations with him this week. I think when it comes down to like that third and whatever, okay, and in the first couple drives, like one of them last game when he threw the ball to Will Mallory, and it was near the goal line, and it was just yes, it skimmed off Will's hands. It did, but it wasn't really a great throw.
Right.
It was really hard and kind of high. It just was a little wild. He needs to hit a couple of those throws and also give his teammates some confidence as well. But yeah, I mean, well, we'll see what happens. North Carolina has just been a thorn.
Yeah.
In my, I mean, I was looking through the last few games, and they've played.
Yeah, last year was the shootout, right? And then the year
last
before.
Year they came back with the 25 points in the second half. And then Van Dyke last throw, got to the UNC 16-yard line, and then Van Dyke on third down, his pass was broken up. It bounced off a Tar Heel. Was there, but 2 years ago it was hard. That was, I think, was that the last game? Was that the year that they did? There was one year.
Well, yeah, 2 years ago was the year when the Javonte Williams and Michael Carter ran for approximately 900 yards.
Oh my God. they ran for an combined NCAA record,
right?
544 yards. An NCAA record. And then Miami gives up 778 yards that game.
Yep.
And that was the most yards Miami's ever allowed, and they got trampled 62-26. And then in 2019, there was like a minute left, and I think it was Bubba Baxa who missed a 49-yard field goal attempt wide left.
That was year one that was game 2 for Manny Diaz. It was, remember they've lost to Florida. That was also like a 1-score game basically with the late missed field goal, and then had to bye North Carolina. They fell to 0-2 with another late missed field goal. So yeah, it's been like every one of these North Carolina games has been pretty memorable.
Right. And they lost by 3 that game also. Yeah. So they could have, but I don't know how much we want to talk about Tyler, but I asked him this week, he talked about it being a rough day. I asked him about I asked him how tough it was to disregard or deal with the booing by disgruntled Miami fans, especially because he has rarely had to deal with it, right? As a Hurricane. And he was really great. I mean, we weren't sure that Mario was going to let him talk to us. And I think Mario really is the way Mario says is the way he is. Just, he doesn't change things.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. He keeps it the same. And he was very upfront about that. He said that the UM fans are very passionate and you've got to get the job done at UM. And that's it, point blank. He said it was rough, but that's how it goes. And that's what I signed up for. What do you think about that? I always wonder about that, about fans booing their own players.
Yeah, it's hard in college football, and I we deal more with Miami fans, so it's definitely a hallmark of Miami fans, but I don't think it's unusual around college football, just like the fickle nature of fandom, basically, where this time last year or whatever, go 3 months forward or 3 weeks forward from this time last year, like Tyler Van Dyke was all of a sudden the savior. We were talking about how good Miami's quarterback situation was with him and Jake Garcia, and obviously we saw it with De'Ara King last year too, right, where 2 years ago he was Miami's savior, and then by the time that he gets hurt and is out for the year, people wanted to see the next guy, and it's the nature of the beast in college football. I always kind of naturally kind of feel bad for the guy, but at the same time now they're making money now, so it's not like they're booing unpaid athletes anymore. So yeah,
They
it's the
are.
nature of the beast. I think everyone, Miami quarterbacks talk about it all the time. That it's and I'm sure Alabama quarterbacks and Georgia quarterbacks and everyone feels the same way, where it's there's a lot of pressure on that job. I think Miami is Tyler was in a unique spot because he was in some ways the singular star for this team coming into the year, right? Like they have a couple other guys who were, potential NFL prospects and stuff like that, but this team had major question marks on defense, major question marks at wide receiver. It was supposed to be the Tyler Van Dyke show, and I think it, naturally probably put a lot of pressure on him. The thing that, and last year he got to play basically with no pressure, so it is interesting to see the way he's responding. He is such an even keeled, like you said, he's always the same. Not a huge rah-rah guy. Like you would think a guy like that is well equipped to handle this situation, but he's got to play better, and team's got to set him up better too, because like we talked about it last week, like he didn't just forget how to play football overnight, right? He was one of the best quarterbacks in the country for the last 6 weeks of last year, and
something's different.
We saw that across a whole month. So
yeah, something's different.
But at the same time, I mean, I think of Spencer Rattler a couple of years ago when he was at Oklahoma. He had the incredible freshman year, and then last year gets benched for Caleb. Everyone was like, this guy's the next Heisman, Oklahoma's next great quarterback, Heisman candidate, potential first round pick. Gets benched for Caleb Williams, who becomes the next great Oklahoma quarterback, Heisman candidate now at USC. And now Spencer Rattler's at South Carolina. Like it can turn quickly in college football. It's the way, especially if you recruit quarterbacks at a high level. It doesn't happen a lot where a guy is anointed in the way that Tyler Van Dyke is, and then kind of gets cast aside, but it does happen. So if it doesn't turn around, I won't be shocked. I don't know if it will necessarily be entirely his fault. Again, because we saw the way he could work with different coaches in a different offense with a different group of wide, like a lot changed, and maybe the fit is just not correct anymore. But it wouldn't be crazy to think that at some point in this year, Jake Garcia could be the quarterback and go on the kind of run that we saw Tyler go on last year. And then maybe next year it'll happen to Jake Garcia and we'll be talking about Jaden Rashad. It's the way college football can work sometimes.
True. It's the way all sports, I guess, work sometimes. And I know I was bringing up the booing thing. But I don't know if you saw Michelle Kaufman's column about athletes are human.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about how do you say it? Higuain? Am I saying it right? The soccer player for Inter Miami.
Yep, Higuain.
Higuain. I'm sorry. Yeah. Another story that you dove into.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was pretty interesting, and about how play even stars are human kind of thing, and they are, and it does affect them. So yeah, that was a really actually pretty good column, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it also made me start thinking about the NIL, as you were saying, and the they're making money now, right? And some of the choices they make now. I mean, Tyler had this just started thinking about this. Tyler had those t-shirts made up, Tyler Van Dyke and all that stuff. It's, I don't know, I wonder if it makes it if players will start like the next phase thinking about what they do when they start marketing things.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more it's more an issue for, not to single out John Ruiz, but he's obviously the guy we talk about on this show because he's the Miami guy, but the John Ruizes and actually Tyler's deals are with a lot of people other than John Ruiz, but it's it's kind of the same way. Like you could I mean, Tua obviously has gotten it on track until his injury, but like a lot of
Right.
people bought Tua jerseys and Tua merch in year one and signed a lot of big sponsorship deals. And for a while it did not, or, who's another Daniel Jones, a Giants quarterback who was a top
Right.
10 pick. And I don't know, there's a lot of people who are not probably very happy that they have a Daniel Jones jersey that's going to be out of date in a year. So it's just kind of, I think it's turned college football uh, into the NFL, obviously, in some ways.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say NIL is kind of a bubble. And I think John Ruiz has said the same thing, that like the money that is flowing in right now, where all these players are getting deals, it's not going to be there in the same way in a couple of years, because in year one, you're optimistic all those deals are going to work out once there's a sample size that shows that, I don't know, 20% of guys who get these big $1 million deals are not NFL players, or, not all conference players, or maybe backups if they get benched. It
Really?
creates, I think, an issue, I think, for the people investing the money in NIL. I don't think it's that big of a deal for a guy like the players who have it. I mean, unless they're clearly spending all their time worrying about it, but I don't think that's the case for any of these Miami guys. All right, let's move on to the North Carolina game more specifically. We touched a little bit on the what do we say, that there'd been the thorn in Miami's side.
Yeah.
And obviously this game, as I said at the top, never right to call the fifth game of the season a must win. But because of the way, Miami obviously has lost 2 in a row, had the bye week, and now goes into ACC play, it does have a little bit of that must win feel. I think it's at least a must play well, right? Like if you lose a shootout to North Carolina, obviously no one's going to be happy, but I think, and it could dash Miami's Coastal chances. But I mean, at least it's a building block. We're talking year one with a coach. We're talking about how much went wrong in the last couple of weeks before the bye. Obviously a win would set them up nicely to fully rebound. I guess that's the question then. Do you think that they can rebound from what we have seen so far this year? And how important is this game to kind of setting that tone for the rest of the year?
Well, I think that this game is as close to must win as you can get. And obviously it's not because they can't win the ACC if they lose this game.
Right.
Because we've seen over the years that usually and this is the last year, remember, that can
Coastal
can
chaos.
Coastal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, next year it's just one big old conference, right? And then two top teams. So it gets even harder. This year, I mean, the Coastals just has not proven to be as strong as the with Clemson and North Carolina State. It's just not as strong probably as the Atlantic Division. So anyway, we've seen that 2 wins, usually the winner, a lot of times the winner has 2 losses, 1 loss for sure. So they could still win if they lose the game. But I mean, David, I think if they lose this game, I think it's just going to be, maybe I'm thinking of us and how crazy it's going to be on social media and the fans and the recruits. And I really
it's the way that Miami has conditioned us. We all talk about it, is the way that these seasons tend to spiral, right? Like every year. Pretty much. I mean, even the good years, even you think of the Orange Bowl year, that season spiraled when they lost to Pitt and they lost end of the year with 3 straight losses. But the next year, I think they lost 5 in a row at one point.
I don't know. Maybe these kids are
honestly, last year was kind of the only year that didn't really spiral. It was bad at the beginning, and then they got on track after Tyler Van Dyke took over, except for the loss to Florida State. But the vast majority, obviously the FIU loss, they ended up losing 2 Conference USA games in the last 2 months of that season. Like it tends to spiral. Obviously, Mario Cristobal is a different coach than Manny Diaz and Mark Richt and Al Golden and Brandy Shant. Like all these people are unique characters, but
Right.
The common characteristic of Miami has been not responding to adversity well. And obviously the Middle Tennessee game is major adversity. You'd hope the bye gives them a chance to regroup and put that behind them. And now they get a chance to really show how they can respond to it. But again, we haven't seen a Miami team do that well in, I don't know, 20 years, basically.
David, do you think that's is that a product? Something else going through my head here, but from the recruits, I mean the players, from Miami.
I mean, it's
The
hard
way
not to
that
say it probably is a little bit, right? I mean,
the way they're used to winning and the way they're, just their collective personalities and stuff, that once they lose, maybe I don't know. Is it something about Miami, not University of Miami, but South Florida?
yeah, I mean, it's hard not to peg it on something more than just these coaches, because again, it's been persistent with different coaches, very different personalities on all these coaches too, right? And Mario is his own unique personality. I kind of feel like, I mean, maybe that's part of it. I kind of feel like the bigger problem has been just the constant churn of coaches, where it is every coach obviously is looking for a different type of kid, right? When they're recruiting, everyone has a different idea of what a Miami player is. Obviously, Mario Cristobal has one idea, Manny Diaz has one idea, Mark Richt has one idea. And I think Mark Richt, how many years is Mark Richt here? 3, 4?
No, I think
3
Right.
years.
Yeah.
Manny Diaz is here for 3 years as head
Yeah,
coach.
16, 17, 18.
Golden was 4, I think. All these coaches, by the time they're getting quote unquote their kids in the building, are out the door, and now the next coach has to figure out how to speak to this group of and that's where we're at. There's kids on this roster who committed when Mark Richt was still the coach, right? And then there's kids on this roster who committed when Mario Cristobal was the coach. Like, it's really hard to, I mean, everyone is in this boat, right? Where it's really hard to 85 scholarship kids, everyone is different, to speak to all of them. Maybe I'm trying to, maybe there is something with the Miami thing. And I think you probably hit on something where a lot of these kids have won their whole lives, and the transfer thing is a mess. And the transfer thing is a mess down here, where everyone is at 3 different high schools. Like there's definitely elements of that, but I think, when you hear about coaches they need time. Yes, it's to recruit better talent in the case of a guy like Mario Cristobal, but it's also to you got to rebuild the culture. And every time a coach has torn down the previous culture and tried to build theirs, they're gone before they're putting the roof back on their structure. And the next guy is tearing it down or trying to keep pieces around. It has not been a good situation. It was not a good situation for Manny Diaz. It was not a good situation for Mark Richt. Everyone has had a bad time. I think
maybe it's like that for maybe it's like that for a lot of different programs now.
Yeah, I think it probably is. All these, I mean, it kind of is like losing begets losing, because you keep firing coaches and keep hiring a guy who's got to try to rebuild it and it's got pressure to do it quickly. Manny Diaz obviously lived and died by the transfer portal, right? It's a holistic issue that takes obviously more than 1 year to fix. If Miami spirals this year, I'm not going to say that Mario Cristobal just can never do, the Mario Cristobal experiment, the Mario Cristobal culture, all that stuff. I'm not going to say it's a failure based off 1 year, because how many kids on this roster did he recruit? 15, something like that. It's in a lot of them aren't playing. So
no, but David, he's scary. I mean, but when we get back to this game, I feel like if they lose this game, I feel like they are going to start losing recruits, and we can do panic meter part 2 or something, because I know last week I started out by saying my panic meter was 6.5 or something on Mario. Then I went down to 5. It's not really Mario per se, as much as what you're saying now. What happens when there's a loss or 2 loss? I mean, how the heck?
Yeah, well, I thought this was in I think Manny Navarro from The Athletic, your former colleague and our mutual friend, obviously, wrote in I think a mailbag he did his theory was basically that a lot of these Miami kids have gotten so used to seeing Miami lose, right? Growing up down here, they have they've watched it happen over and over again, that there's like a little bit of like they're resigned to it. I mean, we're diving into psychology of, again, 85 plus
Well,
kids who we don't get to talk to that much. But I mean,
no,
there's a
but
lot of things, obviously. I don't think there's one simple explanation for why this keeps happening at Miami. And it makes it a tough spot for Mario Cristobal to try to rebuild this thing.
yeah, it does. I mean, it's the truth. And yes, I think it's kind of a must win tomorrow. Okay. Yes, they can still win. If they lose tomorrow, they can still win. But
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
why I
know.
say more of a must play well. Like, I mean, again, maybe even a 3-point
That's not
loss.
going to be good enough.
Maybe it's not going to be good enough, and he'll lose the locker room or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think from my perspective, like, as long as I felt like that we were kind of playing well, if I'm a player in that locker room, like, then you feel like there's something to build on. But
Maybe, but
yeah,
David, North Carolina, I mean, yes. I mean, if you play well, you should win.
right. I guess that's true. That's
I-
fair. That's fair.
Yeah, because playing well,
Right. You're a better,
it's
more
not good
talented
enough.
team that had bigger
Good enough
expectations,
against
guys. Yeah.
It's not good enough against North Carolina, which allowed however many points, a zillion points to some teams this year. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: Miami can't score more than like 20 points this weekend. Then I'm like, I don't even know. Like, then it's, yeah, panic. Like, this North Carolina defense is bad. I mean, they're going to score points, right? Like, Miami's going to have to score 30 plus to win this game, barring like some sort of defensive miracle for this team, or maybe a bunch of interceptions or something like that. And this North Carolina team scoring like 46 plus a game.
and are they going to be able to? Because
Right.
no
So
matter
that's
what
the question,
Mario says that all these people are better, and Jalen, right, is coming back. Jalen Knighton, he says, and who else? Parrish, and the running backs are back, and not the receivers, and they've been playing crummy.
Yeah.
Not Parrish, but as a whole, the offense, the receivers, they've got to do better. They just have to.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on the offense this week because of, well, one, because they haven't played well, and two, because this is a team you have to play well against. And you have to play well against them for two reasons. One is that their defense stinks, so if you don't play well against them, they're like, what the heck are you doing? And two is that North Carolina is going to score, so you got to score to keep up with them. So yeah, it's a probably not the game you want coming off that Middle Tennessee game with the quarterback controversy and all that. It could be a blessing if Tyler comes out and throws for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, because this North Carolina defense is so bad, but it could be a curse too if they fall flat again and you get blown out, because North Carolina, even though I don't think they've done it yet this year, they have the ability to blow teams out.
Yeah, and they did better last week against Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
They held them. So, defensively, I hope the fans can hold off a little bit from booing, just a little, because I really think that affects people. I know I keep bringing it up, whatever. I hope they hold off a little bit from Tyler. Just let this thing evolve a little, but that won't happen.
Yeah, it's the same old Miami in a lot of ways. So they're still out to prove that they can be different. And I think that's a way a lot of people feel right now, right? Is like, show me you're different. And this is a chance in some ways to show them that they're a little bit different, because a lot of recent Miami teams would probably come out and get blown out in this game. And if Miami can win this game, I mean, people are still going to be upset about Middle Tennessee, obviously, but then all of a sudden you can really shift the focus to, we can win the Coastal in the last year of the Coastal. And, it's the 5th game with a new coach, like growing pains are to be expected, all that kind of stuff. So huge. This is a huge pivot point game, I think, for this season.
And they're home. I mean, next week it's Virginia Tech, and that's not easy. And if it's a 12:30 p.m. kick
at Tech, never easy to go up to Blacksburg. So yeah, they gotta, like I said, you say they gotta win. I think they gotta play well. I think they will play well, but again, I'll believe it when I see it. I need them to prove it.
That sounds like me, David.
All right, you can follow Susan on Twitter at @smillerdegnan. She will be out at Hard Rock on Saturday.
And David will be at a wedding.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at dbwilson2. I'm actually like, I'm gonna miss the whole game probably, so I won't even be like tweeting from New York. I'll be yeah, it'll be wedding time, and I'm in wedding mode. So
I know. I don't believe. Wait, are you in the wedding?
I'm not in the wedding, but
No, I don't believe that for a second. By the way, I'm telling these fans that you're going to be sneaking peeks.
well, we'll see if there's a
We'll see
bar
how
somewhere with a
Miami's doing.
TV.
Yeah, you're going to find out how Miami's doing.
Oh, I'll definitely be paying attention. I'll be checking the score. I'll be reading your tweets no matter what. So, I remember I remember the last time I missed a Miami game at a wedding that I could not watch. Was the Virginia Tech game 2 years ago where Nkosi came in, and I think Jaren got hurt in that game, right? And then Nkosi came in and went crazy in the second half, and I think they like missed I think it was the year that they missed all the kicks. I think they missed a clutch kick in that game, but it was like a crazy game that I wasn't there for. So I'm expecting an equally crazy one, because this one has the potential to have the makings of one, I would say.
Every game potentially is crazy for Miami. So
that's true, except for the Middle Tennessee game where they just kind of got lost, kind of got beaten pretty badly.
Yeah, you're right. But I still cannot believe that I went through a period where Miami won 34 games in a row. Do you know what it's like covering 34 winning games in a row?
Yeah.
I started fearing them losing because I had forgotten what it was like to write a losing game story. So yeah.
Yeah, right now we've been rerunning a bunch of 72 Dolphins stuff for the 50th anniversary. We might have to, if things get bad enough for Miami, maybe we'll rerun all your 34 winning gamers to get people to remember the good times. All right, let's finish up there. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.